trying to think of how I want to put this. They're being charged with misdemeanor and felony accounts of abandonment, neglect, malnutrition of these 1,000 cattle and sheep that are getting sick, possibly on the verges of dying due to not having enough feed or not enough water. What are see, I'm struggling on how I want to put this, but what if the conditions on the pasture that those cattle and the sheep were living in or on is due to the weather and there's nothing you can do about that? What are you supposed to do if you run into that situation and all the water dries up and all the grass is dead, but you have
Mhm.
all these cattle? Are you required? Well, obviously you probably should and you probably are, but do you have to move them somewhere else and get all of them out of there?
So there's not a requirement, right? They're considered private property. The same way as a dog or cat owner you have a moral responsibility to take care of your pets. And so there's nothing that requires them to move them. If in fact these were overgrazed pastures, if there was not financial stability in order to provide quality feed, it's very possible that they were maybe trying to make some arrangements in another way. I don't know what that looked like. If you have a pasture where water is inaccessible, most livestock folks will go ahead and move their animals. They'll find another way to
Hmm.
either drill a well, move them to a different stockyard. We don't know those details. And so those ask really great questions though. What do farmers and ranchers do in that situation? We have so many people who take great care of their animals. They would indeed look for
Right.
ways to look for those improvements as fast as possible.
I
Caller
see.
asked, did the sheriff notice the cattle or did the sheriff's department come across this case? And as was reported in this investigation, a sheriff's deputy was called to a rural area after a neighbor initially reported cattle on the roadway, and that led to further investigation of why they were out, what was going on in the pasture, that type of thing.
Right, and I believe you had also mentioned that some of them were brought, what was it, an auction house, and when they were being examined by the vet, they were
They
shown,
were.
or they had been shown signs of malnutrition and not being
Mhm.
taken care of health-wise because they were sick.
Right. That was the case. And there were several animals that as the vets did their inspection and they're, looking them over physically, et cetera, there were some that were to the point that they did have to be euthanized.
I see. So, has this made its way into the court system yet? Is this something that would be brought up in courts? I would imagine it would if they're facing felony charges on it.
Mhm. Preliminary hearings began March 16th. And so that has begun. This whole thing is going to go through its process with the investigation is going to continue. There'll be determined whether or not there could be additional charges forthcoming in the situation as well.